In the previous lesson, we have implemented the plugin which allows us to import CSV files inside of ECMAScript modules. And the way it works is as follows. Whenever we import CSV file, the CSV syntax gets transformed into JavaScript array of objects. But currently our plugin is kind of inlined inside of Vite configuration. But usually plugins are extracted into separate JavaScript modules in the form of factory function. So let's try to move it into a separate file. Just like it is done for the inspect plugin, here we're just importing this plugin and then calling it inside this plugin's array. So we're gonna do the same with our CSV plugin. Let's just cut this whole object, create a new file for this plugin in the root of our project. Let's call it Vite plugin CSV. And this module is going to export one function, which will be a factory function for our plugin. Here we're going to paste that whole object with plugin definition. Let's also move that import that we need in this plugin of the function parse. And since this function parse gets imported from the sync submodule, there is no need to make our transform hook asynchronous, so we can remove this async keyword from here. Let's also rename this plugin on simply CSV, and then let's get back to our Vite configuration and include this plugin by firstly importing factory function from Vite plugin CSV file. And then, just like it is done for inspect plugin, right next to it we're gonna call our factory function CSV, and this way we have just included our own plugin. And please note that there is no difference between including plugins inline in the form of JavaScript objects or by moving them into factory functions and then calling those functions right here in this plugins array. So just to make sure that our plugin works as expected and we get the same result as before, let's run development server and take a look in the browser. As we can see, we get the same data. That means our plugin works as before. And now a couple of words about existing plugins that exist in Vite ecosystem. So first of all, there is a list of official plugins provided on the official documentation page right here. And then, since Vite internally uses another bundle called Rollup to build projects for production, there are a bunch of Rollup plugins that are compatible with Vite projects. And the list of Rollup plugins compatible with Vite projects can be found on this page. And of course, besides official Rollup and Vite plugins, there are countless of plugins built by the community. For example, there is Awesome Rollup repository, which has collection of resources specifically for Rollup. And this page also includes a list of community plugins. And similar page also exists for Vite. This repo is called Awesome Vite. Here we also can find a bunch of links to everything related to Vite projects, as well as plugins developed by the community. And now let's go back to our plugin configuration and consider a couple more options that we can use for our plugin. So an important option is called Apply, and this option allows us to specify which environment our plugin should be included into. For example, if we'd like to use this plugin only during development, we can specify value serve for this option, and this way, plugin will only be activated while we are running development server. And by using another keyword called build, allows us to include this plugin only in production builds. In other words, when we are running command npm run build to build the project for production. So let's see, for example, I'm going to specify value serve, which means the plugin should be included only in development mode. And then if I'll run production build by running npm run build, right away I get an error, because our plugin which lets us import CSV modules was not actually included in the production environment. And then if I'll go ahead and change this value on build, then while running development server, by executing npm run dev in the browser, we're gonna get the following error since our import of the CSV file didn't work. And besides specifying predefined values for this apply option, we can also specify a closure, which gives us more fine-grained control. This closure accepts a couple of parameters, first of which will be a configuration object, and another parameter will also be an object with a couple of useful properties, such as comment and mode. And then let's just print out each of those variables to see what they contain. And by looking in the console, we can see that the first parameter basically printed the whole configuration object, command variable stores value serve, and mode variable stores value development, since currently we are running Vite in the development mode. And based on these values, we can do an extra checks. And if we're going to return value true from this closure, that means the plugin should be included. So for example, if I'd like to include this plugin only during development, I'm going to compare variable mode with the development word, and this way, this plugin will be included only while running development server. And of course, if I'll go ahead and try to build a project for production, I'm gonna get the corresponding error saying that CSV module cannot be imported, since there is no plugin which recognizes such imports. Also, there may be situations where we need to access configuration object in other hooks, for example in this transform hook. So how do we get access to this configuration object from other hooks? And there is actually another hook that Vite provides us with called config resolved. This hook will be called automatically before transform hook, and it receives configuration object, which we then can store in a variable, so it will be accessible to other hooks. So I'm going to declare here a variable called config before returning configuration for this plugin. And then inside config resolved hook, I'm going to assign resolved configuration object to this variable config. So then it's accessible from other hooks. And then based on configuration values, we can easily do extra checks in this transform hook. For example, let's compare value serve with the value stored in command variable. And based on that, we're going to specify this value as the value for option columns for the parse function. So now let's take a look at the difference. Firstly, let's run our development server and check the result, how our CSV code was transformed. As we can see, we got an array of objects where every key corresponds to the field from the CSV file, and every such object corresponds to individual line from the CSV file. And for example, if I'm gonna run development build, in this case we're supposed to get different result. So let's just run this production build in the browser by running preview server. And as we can see, the output is different. In this case, the first element of this array is another array, which consists only of column values from the CSV file, and all other elements store values from individual rows of the CSV file. And now let's review one more useful hook, which basically allows us to transform HTML content. And this hook is called transform index HTML, which is about to receive the whole content of the HTML file. So in here we can do all necessary transformations with the content of HTML file. So let's replace the closing body tag with the following. I'm going to put basic script at the end of the body element, which will open up a dialog with the word hello, like so. And it is very important to position all the hooks on the same level. So the transform hook as well as transform index HTML hook should be included on the same level like this. So now after running the development server in the browser, we can see that firstly we got an alert with the word hello. So our transformation of the HTML file was successful, and at the end of the body element we got that script, which opens up the dialog. So in this lesson we have only reviewed a couple of hooks that we can leverage in our plugins, but in fact there are a lot more of such hooks, and documentation about those can be found in the official Vite documentation. But even only using these hooks, we get a lot of flexibility, and we can transform imported modules in whatever way we like. Let's continue learning about Vite in the next lesson.